Save the Semantics, episode 239. It is December 16th, 2023. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. It's been a nice little week, to be honest. I have been very much I've been sort of distracted, I suppose, from work. I'm starting to kind of feel like I'm in that holiday sort of mindset, where I really just want to take. I'm really not. I'm just not in the work mindset. You know what I mean? Like when that time comes, it will come. But yeah, I've been sort of checked out in that sense. So, but other than that, it's been a pretty good week. I've been able to. Yeah, I've just been able to sort of maintain a decent schedule for on a kind of day-to-day sort of thing. No crazy, nothing crazy happening during the week or anything like that. But it's just been good. It's been really solid. Recording this on a Saturday morning. Weather is very nice. It's cool. I'm out here kind of enjoying things, so I wanted to kind of take advantage of that. So it'll be it's going to be a nice little cap off to this week. So I'm very much taking it all in. I'm drinking it up, if you want to call it that. So there's been some basketball happening. There's basketball happening every week, pretty much until June, when the finals, but this past week of basketball, it's been rough as a Warriors fan, to say the least. Honestly, at this point, the Draymond news is kind of old news, but that shit happened, man. It was wild. I saw that live literally when I tuned in. This is the Suns game on, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. The moment I tuned in is like when he just straight up like 360 punched Nurkic in the face. It was wild to see. I was just kind of like, I don't even what do you even like say at this point, you know what I mean? And yeah, we ended up losing I think it was 2 games this week that we had. How many games have we played this week? We played the Suns and we played the Clippers. And yeah, they both ended poorly. So we're in a rough spot, man. Towards the bottom of the conference. Well, like 11th, 10th or 11th in the conference. Out of the play-in. Obviously out of playoff position. So some changes need to be made if we're really trying to pursue another, if we're really trying to make another run. Again, like I've mentioned, going into this season, I did not have very high expectations of this team, but I still am optimistic in terms of how they can perform and how they can potentially bounce back after about a quarter into the season. There's still plenty of time. You can I don't like to I don't like to necessarily make this comparison, but you can look at what the Lakers did last year. They overhauled. They made some big changes at the trade deadline, and they completely revamped their roster, and they were able to make it to the Western Conference Finals. And, we obviously don't have the same market value or market attraction as, say, LA. However, we're still the Warriors. We still got Steph Curry. We still have championship pedigree. And so I think that if there is the potential that some team out there is willing to take on some of our underperforming players and willing to trade their own underperforming players, or rather, players that don't necessarily work in their system anymore, then it's possible, man. We could always try to make it work. I think the most probable sort of candidate at this point is Toronto. Toronto's been very much in the talks for trade forever with OG Anunoby and Siakam. It's just very difficult for me to kind of see what assets that we have that we're able to give up in order to get someone like Siakam, right? It's just very difficult to kind of imagine that. Like, we would have to give up quite a lot. I don't know what first round picks, or picks in general, that we do have. So it's a little hard to envision how a trade possibility might work. But anything's possible. It could be like a three team trade. Some other team is able to provide salary filler, and they're able to get something else in the process. Like, anything is possible. You can look at like the Dame trade and see how that went down, right? So I think that I don't want to put it out of the possibility. It's just not the most. I just have a difficult time seeing how that might shape out. So, yeah, there's going to need to be some changes, for sure. It's been a really rough, just kind of, going from the playoffs. Like, we were able to get past the Kings in the first round, and that was exciting. But a lot of the issues that carried from last season through the playoffs up until now are still prevalent today. We had a favorable matchup last year in the first round, but I just don't see us having a favorable matchup this year to any team. Honestly, like, we could potentially beat, like, of course we have we have the ability to beat any team in the Western Conference, but in a series, it's just a different setting. You know what I mean? So it's hard to sort of see how things might go out, and I'm still cautiously optimistic of how the season will go. But I've had tempered expectations, and I will continue to have tempered expectations going forward for the rest of the season. They are playing the Nets today. This is going to be kind of it's been said for a minute. I feel like this game is going to be really a litmus test of what we should kind of expect, because the Nets, I feel like at this point, based on kind of their record, they're sort of hovering around the same positioning as we are. They technically have a better record than we do, but they are in a weaker conference than us. So I feel they're sort of right now, currently, based on positioning and roster and just player availability, they're really kind of in a similar position as us. So I feel like this game is going to be. I'm not putting a whole lot into this game because, one, they're not in our conference, so it doesn't really, it's not going to be indicative of what a future round matchup might look like. But based on just kind of how things are, we've played some decent teams, you know what I mean? Like, we've played the Clippers, we've played the Suns. I feel that they are technically better than us, even though the Suns are not, they're pretty shaky, and the Clippers, it looks like they're kind of figuring things out, but there's still so many unknowns with that team. I feel like with this Nets team, they're right kind of around where we are in terms of just the level of play and shit like that. So it'll be interesting to see how we handle these guys. If we kick their ass, I think that could be like a good momentum sort of shifter in terms of, like, potentially going on a bit of a run. I haven't really looked at our schedule for this next week, but we have somewhat of a homestand because I know I'm going to next week's game against the Wizards, and then they're also going to play the Blazers afterwards, the back-to-back. That should provide us some wins. You know, nothing is guaranteed for sure, but I'm hopeful for this upcoming week because we have some favorable matchups, but we need to handle business with Brooklyn later tonight, and I think it's important that we kind of are able to do so. Again, they're a pretty decent team, so I feel like I think that if we can somehow get somewhat of a win against them, regardless, it doesn't matter how we win, but I think that getting this win is going to be really important for this upcoming stretch of games. Again, I'm hopeful. We have like some decent matchups coming up, so I'm again sort of cautiously optimistic that this will be maybe a bit of a bright spot, and then moving forward we can make some changes with our rosters. So yeah, it has been a bit of a rough week though, as a Warriors fan. This last couple of weeks has been a bit of a rough stretch for us. I just have been. It's been a bit of a struggle to watch these games, and then obviously with the whole Draymond situation, it's been really just kind of a shit show, media shit show as well, on that front. So, yeah, just trying to move forward and look forward to kind of how things might progress. I've been playing a fair amount of 13 Sentinels this week. I've caught up quite a bit, or, I've made a lot of progress. I don't want to say caught up because I don't even know what that necessarily means, but I've made quite a lot of progress in the game. Very intrigued as to how the story continues to develop. I do admit I've sort of found myself getting kind of lost in just how many, just kind of the web of stories that this game has. I feel that I sort of have, a sense of what the overarching idea of this, of like the story is, but there's just like when you play as 13 separate protagonists, right? So there's just a lot of things that you kind of lose and if you don't play for like a few days and you come back to it, it's almost like, fuck dude, I gotta like catch up on shit because it's very easy, if you aren't paying attention, it's very easy to lose sight of what the hell is actually happening in this game. But it's been good, man. It's been really good, and I'm probably gonna play a little bit more today. It's just been such a enjoyable experience. I think I've already mentioned that quite a bit, but yeah, I've just thoroughly enjoyed everything this kind of game has had to offer. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how things progress. I'm sort of maybe like 3/4 of the way through what it feels like. But there's still quite a lot that I'm still that's still kind of needed to be uncovered in the story and the narrative. I remember last week I was like talking about I mentioned toward the end that I felt that I was missing something, and I was. There was one thing that I was missing. Last week the Game Awards happened, and I did not watch it. And based on the reception, I'm kind of glad that I didn't. It seemed like it was not a very well. It didn't seem like a very entertaining show. It seemed that the corporate interests got sort of a hold and got sort of the spotlight of the show as opposed to the actual awards itself. And yeah, I don't know. I wasn't really super interested in watching this year anyway. I mean, obviously last year it was like Xenoblade was like awarded for a couple of awards for, especially in Game of the Year too, which is fucking crazy. I'm still thinking about that, but this year it's like kind of it was a fantastic year for gaming for sure. So But it was just I don't know. I just wasn't super drawn into it, so I didn't really tune in. Um, so Baldur's Gate ended up winning, and I'm happy for Larian and the company and shit like that, and it seems like a very excellent game that hopefully I'll maybe have the chance to play sometime later down the line in the far future. I don't know. But I think that it just seems that a lot of this is sort of the issue with I think award shows in general are just flawed. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard to balance entertainment with along with kind of being able to recognize the accomplishments of the industry, and then also provide some like hype and shit like that. I think it's very difficult to do. Like there's a reason why, I don't know, like I remember when there was a whole discussion about the Oscars a while back in terms of how they were conducted and shit like that. And I think it was sort of during one of the COVID years. It was maybe like going into 2021 where they really just like completely like they got rid of hosts, I think, and they just primarily focused on just like the awards itself. Like there was no superfluous things. There were no like skits or musical numbers, or maybe there were musical numbers, but there weren't any like additional things that were shown in between the awards themselves, right? I think they just sort of really honed in on presenting presenting the awards, and then it ended up being like not like like viewed very well. I mean, like the viewership for the Oscars it's been noted to have been going down for quite some time due to just television not being the primary source of viewership nowadays. But I think that it's just hard. I don't know. Like I like what do people? Are there people that are avid award show watchers? Like it's never been entertaining for, I don't know. Like where do you find the entertainment? Do you enjoy Jimmy Kimmel presenting the awards, like, or hosting and shit like that? I don't know. Maybe you do. Are you like an avid Jimmy Kimmel fan? I have no idea. But it's just like I think it's just very difficult to strike a balance between providing a space for the the nominees and those who the winners to get kind of the spotlight, and then also it being sort of this hype factor for the upcoming year. I think it's just difficult to strike that balance. And I just I enjoy, it's fun for me. The fun factor, the entertainment factor kind of comes from it being like watching it alongside other sort of other like people online, and kind of being in part of that conversation, right? Being like excited to see one of your favorite games being awarded and nominated rather, for something, and being like, ooh, hopefully it wins something, and kind of being in that conversation and discussion. But it's really less. I don't know. It's that, but it's not really as much like, yeah, this is like one of the more entertaining programs out there. Like it's not. I don't know if it's for that. It is obviously like a giant commercial. That's been stated. And you can maybe potentially find some value in that because you yourself are excited for the games that are presented, but I don't know, it's just difficult, especially for the way the current game shows are formatted in terms of it being an announcement platform along with an awards show. So I don't know, it's just kind of I'm not super like, how do you make it better while also making it entertaining? I just don't know. And I just don't, I don't really feel like this perfect show really exists. I just think award shows are just inherently flawed. That's really it. That's really what it comes down to. I am not interested in, watching it for the sake of watching it. I'm interested in watching it to, I don't know, it being, a space where some game creators are able to get some recognition. I don't know. And then you're seeing your favorite games get nominated and winning. Like, that's kind of, that's where the excitement lies, and less on, I don't know, the hype factor. I'm not as interested in announcements as other people might be. So yeah, that I passed on watching that. I don't regret it. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, so that was kind of last week, and I forgot to kind of touch on that. So a little late to the party here, but anyways, speaking of sort of end of the year news and that sort of thing. So, all of these companies, they put out these sort of year-end wrap-ups, like Spotify or like Apple Music. Nintendo has been doing this sort of year-end, wrap-up. I wish they did it through like December as well, because then it would have provided some data on the games that I've been playing this month specifically. But I understand, the reasoning kind of behind the, timing and everything like that, right? So, I kind of want to go over the games that I've played, just because I think it'll be kind of fun to share that. The games that I've played, the games that I've put like the most time into, and that sort of thing. So yeah, let's go over that. I'm gonna go over the games in general that I've played this year, because this year has been like the most I feel active I've been with my Switch. I feel like I've played the most games, period, this year. So it's been really good on that front. It's been really fun, and I've, based on the discussions that I've had this year, on this podcast, I've talked about just a lot of the games that I've completed being some of my favorite experiences, honestly, that I've had in a very long time. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of go over them and just sort of talk about again sort of the things that really have stood out to me. So yeah, let's just kind of go over all of the games that I've played based on what my Switch account has noted. So obviously Tears of the Kingdom, Xenoblade 3, Final Fantasy 7, Nier Automata, Ghost Trick, Rocket League, Risk of Rain 2, Slay the Spire, Super Mario Wonder, Monster Train, Super Smash Brothers, 13 Sentinels, Tetris 99, F-Zero 99, Fortnite, Persona 5, and Breath of the Wild. It's a pretty damn good list, man. It's a pretty damn good list of, obviously some of the games are not as, like I played maybe like an hour of Fortnite this year, but it still kind of popped up on the list. Yeah, I've had a very, this year started off with me continuing to play through Xenoblade 3. I think I was just sort of doing some, extra stuff after I sort of completed the main game. This was before Future Redeemed came out, by the way. Future Redeemed came out in like April, I believe. Was it April or like March? Because it was right before Tears of the Kingdom, and the timing, like I mentioned way back then, was like impeccable, honestly. And then yeah, that just like took up more of my time. Before that though, I think I remember like back in February or March, I don't know how I found the time, but that was kind of when I beat Final Fantasy 7. And because I had sort of put that off on the back burner because of Xenoblade 3. And then I kind of came back to it and eventually finished it. But it was just such a great I've talked kind of extensively about the game. There's still so much to discuss with Final Fantasy VII. There's a lot of things to go over. I think I've sort of stated my feelings about the game and how much I enjoyed that experience, that initial experience, and how it very much lived up to the hype that everybody has been discussing for many years now. And yeah, I'm very happy that I finally got the chance to experience it. And yeah, it's very much it is deserving of being considered one of the kind of premier RPG games of all time. And I highly recommend it to anyone who has the chance, who's a fan of RPGs and story based games to check it out. Um, and then I think it was like afterwards that I decided that Future Redeemed came out, and it was like, fuck, dude, that's crazy. I don't know if I can try to squeeze it in, and it actually turned out to be like the perfect timing and opportunity, because I was able to play through that, and I was able to pour a lot of time into the DLC, and it was that's one of my highlights of this year. And I guess we'll kind of get into sort of my favorite gaming experiences this year um, in a little bit, but I guess right now I just want to kind of go in sort of chronological order in terms of what I played. Um, it was just a very um, it was just like perfect. It was just like it was fan service. It was exactly what kind of the fans wanted. I think one of the stronger I have a very strong disagreement with a portion of the community that have said that this game or Future Redeemed should have been what the main game should have been, and I can't disagree with that statement strongly. I can't disagree with it anymore than I can, just because it's just such a, like, if this was the game, if this was what the base game would have been, I think it would have turned off quite a lot of people, because it is pure fan service, which is awesome for us as Xenoblade fans and Xeno fans. But I think if it was what the main game would have been, I think that that would have been a poor decision, and I'm very happy with how they handled things, because the main game is already wonderful in the way it's been and laid out, just it being a very focused story without having to rely on previous games too heavily. Obviously there's the connections that are made, but the story in itself is very much standalone, and I'm grateful that they approach things in this way, and the DLC is sort of like an added bonus to for the hardcore fans, really, and really wrapping up this trilogy in an incredibly satisfying way. So much so that I'm like excited to I'm really excited and looking forward to what Monolith Soft has next. Most likely on the next Switch system, Nintendo system. So yeah, it ended on an incredibly high note, and I was very happy about that. And then obviously the next thing I played in May through June, and I think a little bit in July, was Tears of the Kingdom. We'll get into more of that. I've talked quite a bit about this game, but that took up quite a chunk of my time this year, and rightfully so. And what a great experience! What a wonderful gaming experience that was. After that, I believe I played Ghost Trick after that game, because I noted, or did I play Persona 5 next? I think I played Persona 5 next. I think I might have taken a bit of a break and then went into Persona 5, and then I beat Persona 5. And I've talked a lot about Persona 5. I did a whole review on it. Maybe I'll touch upon it a little later as well, but yeah, I'm that was also a great experience. Then I went into Ghost Trick, and then after that I played Nier Automata, another fantastic game. Like this year has just been back to back to back just me just playing just banger games, man. It's been a really good time. Um, so I played Nier Automata, and what did I do after that? Looking at my list, I guess I played Super Mario Wonder after that, like in October, and in November as well. Um, so I think that was sort of, and then, obviously I played some games in between, like, Slay the Spire, and then, like, Rocket League or Risk of Rain, a little bit in between here and there. And then after that, I went into 13 Sentinels. So, yeah, that's sort of kind of a large overview of my year in gaming in terms of all of the games that I've played. Um, my most played game, my most played game this year, based on what the Switch and my Nintendo account told me, was Xenoblade 3. Somehow, in the same year that Tears of the Kingdom came out, I still ended up playing like 170 hours in Xenoblade 3, which is kind of crazy to think about, because you can account for the DLC with Future Redeemed, right? That was I put in a lot of time. I put in, I think, maybe like 40 hours into Future Redeemed. But then it's like on top of that, I also played another 100 and like 30 hours. Like, what the fuck? Where did that time go? Like, I know that I was sort of doing, a bunch of extra stuff and, kind of trying to quote unquote 100% the game. And then I briefly started up a second playthrough. But damn, I didn't realize that took up so much of my time. And then after that, the next game on the list was obviously Tears of the Kingdom at like 150 hours. But still, man, it's crazy that I still was able to put in so much time into Xenoblade 3. And I imagine I'm still going to be putting in more hours as I kind of maybe, work through like a second playthrough, and then also try to do more like 100%, kind of completion on that front. So there's still some things that I want to do in that game, even though I've sort of you could argue that I've done pretty much everything that I wanted to, but I still want to go back into it and do some kind of like challenge runs and that sort of thing. I feel there's still things that I want to explore with that game. So that's that. But still, it's crazy to think that I still clocked in over 100 hours into the game this year, after a year after its release. And then there's like the third game on that list was Slay the Spire at 69 hours, which is like, oh fuck yeah, it's nice. Nice. So yeah, I think Slay the Spire is just going to continue to be that game for me. That's just going to kind of be there if I ever need it. I've mentioned that I recently picked up Monster Train, which is a very sort of similar card-based deck building game, roguelike deck building game that sort of satiates that, want, and kind of fills in that sort of role or sort of hole that Slay the Spire kind of fills. But it's I don't know. I think Slay the Spire, just as the experience, is just cleaner, in my opinion. I like Monster Train quite a bit. I think there's more of an ability to, mix and match, but I also feel there's like less cards. Like each deck for each character is kind of limited, honestly. Like there's not really a way to, I don't know. It's just not super. It's kind of limited. There's a lot of the samey kind of cards that pop up, and that's kind of been my main criticism with the game, is that it's just sort of limited, which is kind of weird to say because there's like 6 different characters that you can play with, but each deck is not super extensive, which is a little disappointing. With Slay the Spire, you can, like, if you're doing sort of like daily runs, the way they the limitations that they put still allows you to, try to kind of configure a strategy. But I feel like with, I don't know. I think maybe I just need to get better at the game for Monster Train, but it's still fun for sure. But yeah, Slay the Spire I think is just gonna be there for me, and unless there's like, I don't know, it's just a good comfort game. I can just kind of pop in if I just don't have something that I have an urge to play. That game is always going to be there for me. So, yeah, I'm not super surprised with how much time I've put into Slay. Let's talk about my favorite games this year, or just kind of like what my favorite, just kind of like my game of the year. My little own awards show, if you want to call it that. Let's start off with just kind of, I don't have any like predetermined list or anything like that. Best story. It's I still haven't beat the game yet, but 13 Sentinels is going to be up there as one of the most crazy ass stories for a game that I've really played. But because I haven't beaten it yet, I can't really say that it was like my favorite story. I would say it would either be, for this year, my favorite sort of story in a game would probably have to be either Final Fantasy VII or Nier Automata. I think those games were, with Final Fantasy VII, I think that the main drive, kind of the central conflict is pretty straightforward, but it is much more about the characters and how they deal with their situations and the way these characters develop that make the game as intriguing and as interesting as it is. The way that Cloud kind of uncovers his own personality and his relationships that he has with Tifa especially, I think make the game. I think that's what makes that like those sections in the game where they're sort of bonding and they're having these like conversations. I don't want to spoil the game. There's like a section of the game which is one of my favorite sequences, where it's just Cloud and Tifa, and they're sort of working together, or rather, like Tifa is like trying to help Cloud in some way. That's like one of my favorite moments in the game, and that's what really makes it for me. It's really these character moments that kind of build and provide a really rich and kind of fulfilling experience for me. For Nier, I wasn't as invested in the characters per se. It is just much more, but they still are very interesting characters for sure. Like 2B, A2, 9S. I think they are all very interesting in the way they kind of deal with things. It is sort of the conversations around, because it's such a bleak game and there are some very hard-hitting moments, and sort of the way in which the game kind of delves into these moments, and how just kind of this pit of despair that, and these trials that the characters have to go through, make it just a very intense experience. And then it's just something that I've never played before. And of course the gameplay is also very exciting, and is something that I have never really experienced before in the game. So that kind of tied in. But the kind of the main drive is sort of the narrative of this game, and that's kind of what that's sort of why I sort of want to put it in the category of most, one of my favorite stories. How many more should I do? Should I do like best gameplay? I don't fucking know, man. I think Nier Automata had some fantastic gameplay, and in terms of just the third person action combat, and then kind of switching into an arcade shooter and kind of bullet hell sort of thing. I think that I don't know. Nier had some very exciting gameplay moments, and I guess you could argue like Mario Wonder is like a really well polished like platformer. Yeah, I don't know. What a mess. What a mess of a awards show. Let's just get to my favorite game of this year. I mean, there's been so much. There's been just such a great slew of games that I've played. Future Redeemed is up there for me. It was just so like I just had so much fun, and it was so like it was just such a good experience, especially as a Xenoblade fan. Like it just satiated everything that I wanted. You know what I mean? I was like, this is like everything, and then you tie it to like the other series. I don't want to get into that too much, but it's just like, oh, the possibilities, man. Afterwards, like it's just the universe for this franchise is wide open, and I'm just like so excited to see how things will go down. My game of the year is Tears of the Kingdom. And it's not a game that honestly I'll be revisiting anytime soon for reasons that I've already talked about, because I feel that I've gotten a complete experience from the game, and subsequent playthroughs of the game are probably not going to provide as much excitement. I just because like once you've already the novelty of the game is really, and the novelty of the experiences, the first experiences of the game are really what draw you in. And there sometimes I sort of conflate, and I think that because I feel like maybe I'm not. I feel like I'm not super consistent in the way that I present games and the way that I kind of talk about games. It's like, oh, if this game doesn't have this, if it doesn't have like a replay value, if it's only like, if the game you can only beat in like 10 hours or something like that, it's not worth it based on like the price tag and shit like that. I'm really trying to move away from thinking of games in that way, because it's honestly just based on how, or what it really comes down to. It's just based on how you feel about it. It is like sometimes you can look past the flaws of certain things. You'll see some little blips within the game. Maybe the graphics aren't as as good as compared to like other games, or there's moments in the story where you think it's maybe flawed and were maybe unnecessary. But it comes down to how you ultimately feel about this game. And my initial experience with this game was one of my favorite gaming experiences that I've really had. Like it really replicated how I felt playing Breath of the Wild for the very first time, but in a different way. It's like I had kind of these moments in Breath of the Wild where like, holy shit, I'm doing this, and just like this is such a brand new experience. I've never had this happen in a game before. But like with Tears of the Kingdom, there was just moments of just awe. The first like 40-50 hours of the game were like fucking phenomenal, and I wouldn't change that for anything. It's just like there's just moments where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe there's just sequences in the game, and you know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean? And it's like this whole argument with like replayability or whatever. And I don't feel as strongly now as I did maybe before in regards to like, oh, if this game if you play it on the second time, it's not going to have the same impact. It's like, no shit, right? It's like, no shit. It's the same thing with some of my other favorite games. Like if you you're not going to get the same experience as you did when you played it for the first time. You're just not. So I just don't like some games you don't need to replay. You know what I mean? You can if you want to. There's no there's no like restrictions on that. But like it's just what it is. These first time experiences are that you're not going to be able to experience it in the same exact way as you did before. But that doesn't devalue it in any way, shape, or form, right? Of course, like there's been a lot of dialogue about the game, about Tears of the Kingdom specifically, that's come out, months after it was released, and the criticisms, and I totally feel that, and I've discussed that before, and I very much I do agree with kind of the lacking story, and some of the elements that are sort of inconsistent between the games and inconsistent between other Zelda games, right? And I think all those criticisms are valid. But it just for me personally, it doesn't take away my overall enjoyment of the game that I had when I first played through it. And I think that I think that's fair. Like you don't need to make excuses to why you enjoyed something, Sometimes it's just like you enjoyed it because there was something that you felt satisfied within yourself. And there's also you also don't need to provide you also don't need to be super. I think that sometimes we get into this kind of reviewer mindset. It's like, oh, this and this are the reasons why this game is good. It's like you don't have to. I don't think you necessarily have to justify why you personally enjoy the game. There's just some things in it that you enjoyed, and sometimes it's just hard to articulate why you felt a certain way about a game and why you value it so much. You know what I mean? So I think that it's I think that I guess I'm trying to sort of you know I enjoyed so earlier this year, back in like the summer, I did a review of Persona 5, and I enjoyed that game a lot, but I also had quite a lot of criticisms with it, and I tried to sort of format that discussion in sort of a reviewer format. And again, while I did enjoy doing that, I just didn't feel that I was sort of like, I'm happy that I tried it out, but it's just not something that I want to do with games, and like kind of formatting in terms of like I mean, I could still do that, but I think I tried to do it like too much in this kind of rigid form. And I don't know, I think I tried to put up these like place markers as to why this game like I was almost like, am I gonna give this game a review, like a score at the end of this? Like I don't know, it just didn't feel, it's not something that I want to kind of do when I discuss a game too much anyway. Where I kind of like do all these like steps of like gameplay, and then the graphics, and just UI and shit like that. I don't want to do that too much, you know what I mean? Unless I really want to. So I think that it's just like a gut feeling, you know what I mean? And I think that it's weird to say that I would moving forward, I prefer to kind of move like in regards to kind of games, and I guess just art, just like art mediums in general. I sort of feel that I would prefer to move with like this gut feeling, as opposed to what I think in my head is like, oh, this is like a technically impressive thing, because I think that I will be sort of depriving myself from enjoying the thing. And if I'm like, I also used to do this when I was younger as well. I'm guilty of this, where I was very like nitpicky of like certain things and stories, or it's like I remember back in high school, CinemaSins was like a big thing, right? But a lot of people have, you know, myself included, have like moved past that because it like what are you doing? Like, just enjoy the movie, or if you don't enjoy it, that's fine. If you recognize or you sort of see that there are some plot holes, that's okay, but like don't let that ruin the entire experience for you. You know what I mean? So I just, you know, it's fine if that's how some people consume media, but I just think that it's kind of is a bit of a, I don't know, it's like a shitty way of consuming things. It's a shitty way of enjoying things, and that sort of approach I feel kind of applies to, you know, one of my favorite mediums, gaming, and I want to move away from that, and I want to experience games, of course, like the, you know, the technical things and the gameplay things, they do matter, but it is much more just like, it's just kind of the feeling of things and how you are able to kind of take away from that. So that's really my reflection, I suppose, after playing through all of these games, all of these wonderful games this year. My reflection is that I care less about the minutia of things and more about just kind of the overall experience and the feelings that I have in kind of the current moment that I am playing that game, you know? So I think that's really my takeaway from this year after playing all of these games. And so yeah, I want to end it on that note. I was going to get into a whole discussion about 13 Sentinels. I touched upon that earlier, but I'll save that for next week as I progress further into the game and probably have some more comments in regards to that. So I will end it off on this note for today. Anyways, thank you for listening. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.